The marble pillars of the Supreme Court chamber gleamed under the flood of television lights. For the first time in years, millions of viewers tuned in not only to hear arguments but to watch the sparks fly between one of the court's most polarizing figures, Justice Clarence Thomas, and the fiery Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The hearing was billed as a sober discussion on judicial ethics, campaign influence, and the role of transparency in America's highest court. But from the moment Jasmine Crockett stepped into the chamber, her bright blazer popping against the dull suits and black robes around her, the air seemed charged. Reporters whispered to one another, "She's here to fight." Justice Thomas, sitting at the far end of the bench, leaned back in his chair, wearing his familiar expression, half bored, half amused, with just a touch of disdain. The smirk, the one that said he had weathered decades of criticism and nothing could pierce his armor now. Crockett adjusted the microphone, shuffled her notes, and began in a voice steady enough to cut glass. "Justice Thomas, you've sat on this bench for over 3 decades. You've shaped laws, rewritten precedents, and yet, time and again, we find ourselves circling back to one question: who holds the court accountable when the court itself refuses to answer?" The silence was sharp. Cameras zoomed in. Thomas raised one eyebrow and gave that slow, deliberate smirk. "Well," he said, his voice deep and unhurried, "accountability is a word politicians like to throw around when they want attention. The court is above politics. Always has been. Always will be." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. Crockett didn't flinch. She leaned forward, eyes blazing. Above politics. Or above consequences. The room erupted. Some gasped, some clapped, while the presiding moderator banged a gavel for silence. But Crockett had already shifted into full attack mode. For the next 15 minutes, she laid out reports of luxury vacations, undisclosed gifts, and quiet connections between billionaires and justices. Each fact dropped like a hammer. Thomas sat still, smirk intact, as though daring her to land the final blow. Then it came. "Justice Thomas," Crockett said, voice sharp as lightning, "you claim the court is above politics. But the people of this country see through that smirk. They see a man who has lived decades under the protection of power, not accountability. And let me tell you something, today, that smirk won't save you." Gasps. Silence. Then thunderous applause from the gallery. For the first time that day, Clarence Thomas shifted uncomfortably. By the second half of the hearing, the moment had already gone viral. Social media lit up with clips of Crockett's words, hashtags blazing, hashtag Crockett vs Thomas and hashtag the smirk. Cable news anchors replayed the exchange on loop. On one channel, commentators claimed Crockett had disrespected the court. On another, they hailed her as the voice America had been waiting for. Inside the chamber, however, Crockett wasn't done. "Respect is not automatic," she declared, turning toward the cameras so the nation could see her fire. "Respect is earned. And when our highest court dismisses transparency, when it hides behind vague traditions and unchecked power, it loses the respect of the very people it is supposed to serve." Justice Thomas finally leaned forward, smirk fading into something sterner. "Congresswoman, you speak of respect as though it can be demanded at will. But respect for the court is not optional, it is foundational to our democracy. Undermine that, and you undermine the very system that protects you." Crockett's laugh was quick, sharp, and shocking. "Protects me. Justice Thomas. This court has failed to protect women's rights, voting rights, and basic freedoms. Don't talk to me about protection when millions are left unprotected every single day." The audience roared. The moderator once again struck the gavel, but the sound was drowned out. Crockett had captured the moment, and Thomas knew it. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a tight jaw, his silence saying more than any rebuttal could. Later that night, in interviews, Crockett was asked if she regretted confronting a sitting Supreme Court justice so directly. She smiled and said, "Regret? No. Someone had to say it. Power unchecked is power abused. And I refuse to sit silent while the highest court in the land pretends it's untouchable." The clip of Thomas smirking, followed by Crockett's comeback, became the image of the week. Commentators said it would go down in history as the moment the court's untouchable aura cracked under the weight of truth spoken live, raw, and unfiltered. And as for Clarence Thomas, he never smirked the same way again in public.